Welcome again to my presentation of, basically my digital matter, matière numérique in French, presentation for the month of April. So I will be presenting you photos I took between mid-March and mid-April using computational photography. So basically apps and algorithms I've developed for my own practice. So yeah, let's start like last month. So I'll start with two pictures. The picture on the left is computational photography, is matière numérique. It's again, most of the pictures I will be showing today have been taken with my main app, which is Camare, C-A-M-A-R-E. And here's the first picture I've shown you last month on the left. So that's the input filter is Haben and the output filter is Filmulator is Cadeau Adent 100. The rendering, what I found interesting in those two pictures is the picture on the right was taken with an old Leica M8 camera with a 50mm f2.5 Sumaret M lens. So really traditional digital photography, if I can say, on the right. Exact same place, exact same time. And, computational photography on the left. I found interesting to just show how different the output is and how the story, that's not the same framing, but how the story can be really transformed, in my opinion, just by the way the photons are captured, how you simulate, emulate, and recreate the sensual matter by ways of software on the left. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I actually prefer the one on the right, but just an illustration of, it was interesting to show that picture I showed last month, how different it is from traditional, and actually traditional, but with an old digital sensor on the right. It was a CCD sensor. It's 10 megapixel on the right, 12 megapixel was iPhone 12 Pro Max on the left. The next three pictures, so that's again Camare. Basically, when I develop algorithms, I really use them and overuse them, abuse them, try to understand if they're, valid for distribution online. So the picture on the left, that's the early days of the Haben insaturator using the Cadeau Adent 100 Filmulator. The three pictures are it's the end of my trip in the San Francisco Bay Area, Northern California. The picture on the left is actually facing westwards. So we're in East Palo Alto, so really central in the Silicon Valley, looking towards the mountain range, which is just before the Pacific Ocean. Basically the town of Woodside, I guess, in that right lane. And the San Andreas Fault is just in front of those mountains. So Silicon Valley is a really interesting place. It's not just, high-tech campuses. It's also normal life, marshlands like in the middle picture, nature, interesting landscapes and urban constructions. On the right, that's using Safrano Cadeau Adent 100 Filmulator. Just an ambiance picture using those algorithms. One thing I do when I develop on those two pictures, that's also something. It's actually, I'm starting to look at it a little bit more, but I've been documenting my coding process when I develop my apps, my software. Because when I code, I actually have to test what I do, and I'm in front of my computer, and often I have to see if it basically works. I'm not yet testing the new algorithms in real life situations, but actually I am, but in front of my computer. So I'm holding the device, sending the code on it to see if it works, and looking at if there's bugs or basic incoherences in the code. And so on the left, it's using Darkcam, this app that uses the same algorithms in Camare, but in a different way, with a random preset, but the Cadeau Adent 100 Filmulator. Here, it simplifies my life for documentation when I use apps that actually type in what the parameters are. That's a Morkmall insaturator. And on the right, that's probably using an iPad mini with Camare as a square insaturator and the Monique DCC filmulator, which is a CCD sensor simulation from the early days of CCD sensors. So really, yeah, it's kind of the graphic. The narration is actually me developing the code. I might do something out of all those pictures I've taken and kept from my development process. Here, that's two pictures from the end of my Californian trip in the San Francisco airport. The picture on the left is taken with my iPad mini using the Vica app. I don't know if there's an insaturator here, but it's the Cato Adens 100 filmulator. Just to show that basically all those devices have different optical and sensor characteristics. So they're part of my tests, my algorithms that are going to just be cosmetic overlays to the basic capacities, photographic capacities of the device. So definitely not the same rendering from an iPad mini than from an iPhone 12 Pro Max, like on the picture on the right. Dynamic range is going to be different. Obviously, the optical capacity, it's a super wide angle on the right. So basically a 28 millimeter equivalent on the left on the iPad and a 13 millimeter on the right. And on the right, that's just to say it's HDR as an insaturator and the Pola Laurel filmulator, which is a simulation of a digital color printer. I kind of liked the ambiance in the business lounge of the SFO airport. Here's those three photos. The one on the left and central is just an illustration of the Haben insaturator. All my algorithms are actually developed with the idea that they have a variable that modifies the way they react. And I also work on the complete range of transformations that are from a minimum value to a maximum value of that variator. And here we have the minimal value on the left, maximal value on the right, just an illustration of how different the algorithm will render the image. But I always try to keep the sensuality and specific character of the process, such as you don't fall into another type of rendering. You really have, I try to make it feel sensual and analog, actually. And on the right, it's basically the two first pictures are in Zurich and Zurich Airport, and the right picture is, I kind of like the composition. It's basically the plane starting to lift off, the sun setting down, and that's basically Haben and Cato Adent 100 as a filmulator. Those three new photos. The left photo is just an illustration that's probably Cato Adent 100 as a film and Haben as an insaturator, but I've re-edited the picture probably using Photoshop for iPhone or Snapseed, whatever app. Just nothing prohibits you to rework in post-production a photo to make it have more sense to you. In that case, I sort of tried to increase the contrast and whatever. It's probably Zurich Airport when I was lifting off. The middle picture, that's Haben and the Cato Adent 100. Same thing actually for the right picture. Still trying to process in the use those new algorithms, see if I can use them use them in a way that makes sense for what I want to say. And those two pictures I found interesting, the way it diffuses the colors and the light. Just two examples of it. The left picture here, same thing, Haben, Cato Adent 100. Again, when I develop those algorithms, it's a process also. It's a long, slow process of when I know I'm going to develop new insaturators and filminators. So actually the practice of using the older ones bring me to somewhere else where I will develop a new algorithm that will fill in the void of the algorithm I miss for my work. So yeah, I overuse them. I kind of like that leaf that looks like, it was taken in autumn while we're in springtime. So yeah, anyways. On the right, the picture, that's dark cam. Again, really fun to use the randomizer. When I test my apps, I like to put them in those randomizers. That's actually how I started developing randomizers for my other photo apps using the Camare film engine, image engine. Because actually, there's so many parameters in those algorithms. I realized that by using the randomizer, I actually get results I didn't expect by mixing all those algorithms, all those computational techniques. So that's one result I kind of liked. Again, 3 photos. On the far left, Morkmal with the Kado Adent 100 film emulator. This weird, ghost image with low-res digital artifacts and this very specific color rendering, which roughens the contrast. It's kind of a weird rendering. I like Morkmal in that sense. The middle picture, I honestly don't really know what I've used. Maybe no insaturator, but probably Kado Adent 100 as a filmulator. But yeah, I test my apps low light, high light. I think if you like experimenting, just try your equipment that works also for non-computational photography, and try to use your equipment in times and places where you didn't expect to use them. Sometimes it's interesting. And on the far right, that's again, the filmulator is Kado Adent 100 and definitely semi as an insaturator. I work a lot with this portrait orientation photos in 1:2. But when you put the camera, I also like once in a while to change. Here that's in a restaurant. I'm using Camare. Here I'm 2 things I don't do usually. Working in the 2:1 format, so in basically panoramic orientation. And that's Haben with a new film emulator, which is Kado Adent 200 Plus, based on an old APS film Kodak made. I was trying it out. I liked the ambiance in that restaurant, French restaurant in Switzerland. Yeah. Another thing I don't usually do is I've added those the borders. That's something that Camare enables. You can enable in Camare. You have a bunch of options. Gives the frame actually brings something extra to the overall composition, which I find interesting, which I don't usually like or use, but just for an example. Here again on the far left picture, framing, as we've seen already, dark cam by default in random mode puts that frame around. And here the random preset gave me something interesting with the WeBack insaturator and the Kado Adent 100 film emulator, which I definitely didn't expect to get, but really interesting in my opinion. I liked the result. And in the 2 other photos, that's back to Camare, the 1:2 aspect ratio, with the middle picture being in the West Genevan countryside. 1st of April, fresh snow, not very typical of the time, happens once in a while. And I actually documented a process, an analog process I was working on using a large Chamber 4x5 Intrepid camera with a Rodenstock Apo Cyronar 150mm f5.6 lens and an instant back by Lomography, which is named Lomograph using in Fuji Instax wide. Yeah. That's Haben with Kado Adent 100. Definitely I kind of prefer using my own apps to document my other photographic processes. And the right photo is That's basically on a freeway in central Switzerland, again with the snow. I found it interesting, this big pillar. I don't know, there was something I liked in the ambiance. Here again, when I develop new algorithms, I have this new film emulator, the Cato Adent 200 Plus. So I extensively use it, work on it, and try to practice it once I feel it's kind of right, in order to fine-tune it before distributing it. So on the left, that's Semi as an insaturator with this new film emulator. And on the right, probably didn't intend to take this picture. It's a dual photography photo. It's basically taking a photo on both sides of my device at the same time. And I probably tried to take a picture and messed up, and I was looking at my phone. And so it took a picture of the ground and of my face looking at the camera. But I kind of liked the result of the Haben insaturator with the Cato Adent 200 Plus film emulator. I like the result, so I'm showing you this picture with this dark sky, and yeah. Again, same settings probably on the left picture, but with Semi as an insaturator with this new film emulator. That's the Rhone River. I like taking photo walks when I want to test my apps, so I walk around. That's in Geneva, obviously. Again, the middle picture, that's same film emulator for the three pictures, but using in the middle picture the Markmal insaturator with this very characteristic ghost image, geometric ghost image. And on the right, it's not in focus, but I like the rendering, and that's probably with the Safrano. No, sorry, it's the Semi insaturator as an entry filter. Those three next photos. On the left, a small shout out. That's the view from the parking lot of the PEM Image photo studio in central Switzerland. It's in the canton de Vaud, the state of Vaud at La Sarraz. So PEM is Pierre-Edouard Monnier. He's a photographer, and that's the view of the parking lot in his studio, which was his studio is in an old complex which used to wash industrially wash things. Anyways, it's an old reconditioned factory, and that's using Haben and the Cato Adent 100. The middle picture is using Arguable with the color maps being slightly moved, and the Cato Adent 200 Plus film emulator. And on the right, that's again the film emulator, this new film emulator, Cato Adent 200 Plus, but using the typical Markmal insaturator. It's springtime, so you have all those beautiful flowers and colors. Again, here, those three pictures taken while testing this new film emulator, the Cato Adent 200 Plus. Far left is the Semi insaturator. That's basically a detail on the wall with all those plants going up. The middle picture is I took this picture also thinking about a project, a collective project that is the PAV Snapshots project in Geneva. It's a new neighborhood, and that's basically a picture of an old military facility that has been destroyed, and because there are some toxic elements in the ground and it's an old construction, basically maybe some asbestos or things like that. The black hills you see are actually the remains of all the stones that have been destroyed and covered by a synthetic black cloth. I find it an interesting picture to take, and that's definitely the weird rendering of this Cato Adent 200 Plus, which I had difficulties at first to master, but they're quite consistent. So on the right, same thing, but using the Haben insaturator on those beautiful pink flowers. Some have asked in the previous presentations about digital matter. It's always on screen. It's always digital, but photography is also a physical substrate. There's prints, and so just an example. I don't talk about much of this kind of rendering in my presentations because it's obviously easier to do it by digital means. But In that case, I thought I'd show you when you print those pictures in large format. Basically, your digital matter is also, it's not only emittive matter. It's not only using screens that emit light. It's also, you can also print it using digital printers. That's a Canon printer. And when it's on paper, on whatever physical substrate, then it becomes reflective. And more traditional photography is also reflective, is also a reflective medium. And that's just an example to show that obviously you can use. That's what my goal, my work is usually printed formats and printed mediums. And in that case, that's a work I'm exhibiting end of April, beginning of May in the PhotoGenève International Photo Festival, PhotoGenève Festival. Part of a collective exhibition with 6 other photographers. There's Aline Kundig, Daniel Reis, Isabel Gargaos, Thomas Casudesal, Sylvia Schwartz, and Reza Kalfan, just to mention them. But if you're in Geneva, end of April, the beginning of May, I highly recommend you to go see the PhotoGenève Festival. And I'll be presenting matière numérique, basically photos printed that come from my own software. And that's a second example. There's still the protective layer on the frames, but working on triptychs and all taken with my own software that you might find interesting. But anyways, I hope you found this presentation interesting or just entertaining. That's the goal. If you have questions or comments, don't hesitate. You can post them below. I'll try to answer as soon as I can. Yeah. Hopefully you enjoyed, and see you next time.